Have you ever read a book and thought to yourself, wow, this is really different from anything else that I've ever read? That's how I felt after finishing The White Darkness. The novel by David Grann is unlike anything I've ever come across. It tells the story of Henry Worsley, a British explorer who became obsessed with Antarctica, and the history of Ernest Shackleton's ill-fated 1914 expedition. I knew nothing about this before I started the book. Henry was determined to recreate that journey. And in 2015, he set out across the continent with two other men. But what began as an adventure quickly turned into a nightmare, as these three explorers were bested by bad weather, illness, hunger. You're fighting against the elements. Their ordeal was chronicled in real time by Grann, who had been granted unprecedented access to Worsley's journal entries and satellite phone conversations. The result is a gripping tale of survival that will leave you both exhilarated and terrified. If you're looking for something a little different, I would highly recommend it. Sadly, Worsley would die just 30 miles from reaching his goal. He was completely obsessed with this journey, wanted to achieve it, had been working his whole life to getting there. Henry attempted to become the first person to walk solo and unsupported across Antarctica. The book starts with Worsley's childhood dream of wanting to explore Antarctica, which sparked by reading Ernest Shackleton's autobiography. From there, we follow Worsley on his various expeditions to both the North and South Poles, as well as his eventual attempt to cross Antarctica. The book is part adventure story, part history lesson, part biography. I knew nothing about Shackleton either, and they do go into quite a bit of detail about him. Grant does an excellent job weaving all of these elements together to create a compelling and fascinating tale. It is a shorter book, but the writing style is really great, and as someone who wasn't really familiar with this, it still felt very easy to get into. He does an excellent job of transporting the reader to Antarctica, and I felt like I was right there, alongside Worsley and his companions as they battled the elements. I was also impressed by the amount of research Grant must have done in order to recreate Shackleton's expedition with such accuracy. It's an excellent book, very well researched and well written, and Grant does a great job of bringing his readers into Worsley's world. It's clear that he has a great deal of respect for him, but there definitely were parts of this book that were slow going, and I kind of skimmed over some of the more technical jargon about the Antarctic exploration. However, these sections are definitely far and few between overall, so I definitely would say the book is well paced. You just might need to look up some words. There were times when the book dragged on a bit, particularly in the second act, the middle section. Again, it's not a giant book, so that section is relatively small. There was a lot of material the author had to cover, so not every page is going to be, super exciting. It's definitely part history and part biography. He paints a vivid picture of these brutal conditions that Shackleton and his men faced, and just thinking about these early explorers and what they had to go through. And he brings Worsley to life as this complex and fascinating character. One of the things I found most interesting about the book is Grant's exploration of obsession and why people are drawn to dangerous pursuits. Worsley was driven by a need to test himself against the elements and was willing to risk everything, including his life, to do so. While I don't necessarily understand that kind of obsession, I would never go out and climb Mount Everest. That's not something I have to achieve. Grant makes it easy to see how someone could be pulled there by the call of adventure. Have you ever read a book that was completely different from anything else you have ever read? That's definitely how I felt after I finished. I'm so glad I read it, but it's definitely not the subject matter that frequents my bookshelf. Have you read anything similar or on the topic of this exploration, or more books about Shackleton? Let me know in the comments below. I would recommend this book to anyone interested in adventure stories or biography. This book definitely has some heart-wrenching moments, and if that's not your style, this might not be the book for you. But if you're interested in a well-written story about exploration, courage, and the human spirit, I would highly recommend giving it a read.